Hello dog friends, let's make the modern dog bandana together. This is a fun and quick project. It takes about an hour to make. So let's begin. The first step you want to do is cut your fabric pieces. I have chosen fabrics that are the same color as mentioned in the pattern. So we got pink for fabric A, teal for, not quite a teal, but close enough, teal for fabric B, and then gray for fabric C. And the first step is to sew the tie straps. So let's grab those pieces, and that's the two long pieces of fabric C, the gray one. So what we need to do is fold them in half the long way, and then we need to stitch along the long raw edge and one end. So let's put a few pins in. I don't always pin when I sew, so I'm just going to put a few pins in here, but you put as many in as you are comfortable with when sewing. One up here. There. And then do the same to the other strap. And make sure you're folding them so the right side is on the inside. You have the wrong side out. And we'll put a couple up the side here. There. And one here. And now we're going to take these to the sewing machine, and we're going to start at the one end. Make sure you backstitch to secure the seam, sew to the corner, and then all the way up the long side. And you do not have to backstitch up at this end. We'll be sewing over that when we assemble the bandana, so that'll secure the seam, but you can if you would like to. So let's go do our sewing. Okay, so we have our seams done on the strap, and I use the nice bright pink color so you can see where I stitched a little bit easier. So what we need to do before we turn them right side out is we need to trim our corners. That just help reduce the bulk once we turn them and make the corners a little bit nicer. So trim the corner, do the same on the other strap. There. Make sure you don't get too close to your seam so it weakens that seam and it doesn't hold up. So now we need to turn the straps right side out. I love using the Dritz quick turn tool for that. It comes in a pack of 3. This is the widest of them. Fairly inexpensive, about $10 to $12. And it's a super handy tool to have if you plan on making quite a few bandanas. It's definitely worth the investment. So let's use that for turning the first strap. So what you do is you just insert this tube in the open end of the strap, slide it all the way to the end of the strap, and then you use a little bamboo stick to guide it down through the tube. And I prefer to use a flat end versus the pointy end because sometimes the pointy end will poke through the fabric. So just stick it right in the tube and guide it through, and see how it just keeps sliding in, and then it comes out on the other end and it is turned. Pretty cool, hey? And then this bamboo stick also works out really good to poke down the corners there to get those looking nice and sharp. So there we go. Now this one's ready to press. Now if you don't have the quick turn tool or don't want to invest in that, you can also use any long skinny object from your kitchen drawer. such as a drinking straw or a chopstick. So let's give that a try for the other tie strap. Now to use those, you do need to get the turning started a little bit first. And to do that, you just pull at the sides of the, pull on each side of the strap to kind of open it up, and then you tuck that stitch end inside itself. And this just kind of gets the turning going a little bit before we use the straw. It can be a little tricky, but just keep working it. There. Now we got a good little start on the turning. See that? And then you just take your straw and stick that inside the little start of the turning that you got going, and then let the straw rest on a solid surface, and then pull on the sides of the strap and gently, oops, guide it over the straw. Oh, oh, oh goodness, now it's going to really be difficult because of course when I'm recording. So all right, here we go. So just pull at those sides and slide it down over the straw. Okay. There. Now we got it going. And then you just keep sliding it over, and then see, just like that. So a good solid plastic straw works just fine too. I wouldn't recommend one of those thin one-time use ones. They won't hold up for this. It's got to be a reusable one that's in sturdy plastic. And then you do still need something pointy to get those corners out. So if you have a chopstick, that works great for that. Otherwise, you'll have to look through your drawers and see what else might work for you. So that's pretty good too. The chopstick does a good job as well. So that was the other one. So either way will work for turning your straps. So the next step is going to be to press the straps, and then we're going to top stitch them. So let's get our iron out. And before I press, I like to just finger press the seam a little bit just to get that nice sharp edge started. So there's one. I'll do that to the other one. There. Okay. And then we're going to give it a nice press. And if you need to, you can use steam or mist a little water on there. You can do starch too if that's what you prefer. I don't feel like I need any, just a good press. So there's one. We'll do the other one. Give it a good press there. Okay. So now we are ready to finish our straps. And what we're going to do is we are going to top stitch. So we're going to start up at the open end. This is the end that's open. And you're going to sew all the way down the one long side, the short side, and then all the way up on the other long side. And you're going to do that for both your straps. and you do not need to backstitch. We're gonna sew across that seam when we assemble the bandana, and that will secure it. You can if you feel better, but you don't have to. So let's go do our top stitching. All right, we got our top stitching done. And again, I used a nice bright pink thread so it would be easier for you to see. So we got a nice top stitching around the strap. You don't have to do this, but it gives it a nice finished look. It also helps the strap stay nice and flat when you wash it. So I definitely recommend you do it. So now we can put our straps aside while we work on the main piece of the bandana. Okay, so now we want to assemble the main piece of the bandana. So we need the remaining fabric pieces for that. We have our two fabric C pieces, our fabric A and fabric B. And what we need to do is attach a fabric C to the side of A and a fabric C to the side of B. Put a few pins in there to hold it in place. I'm just going to put 2 in, but if you're more comfortable with a couple more, you go ahead and put a couple more in there. There. A couple pins in this one. Okay, so now we need to stitch along that edge right there. And you do not have to backstitch to secure your seam. You can if you would like to. I will show you a step a little further ahead to make sure those seams don't unravel when you assemble the bandana. I find sometimes when you backstitch and you have to press a seam open, it can feel a little bulky. So I prefer to do it the other way, but you can backstitch if you prefer. Okay, now we have our 2 sections completed, B and C, A and B. I mean A and C. So what we need to do is open it up and then press the seams on both of these open. So let's grab our iron. I like to get the seam started just a little bit with my fingers and then just give that a good press. I'm just going to give the whole thing a little press while I got the iron here. And our other piece, get it going just a little bit and press that one open. Just give these a little iron. This one looks a little wrinkled, so let's get that out. There, that's better. Okay. Then we need to piece these 2 together, and I'll put them how they show in the pattern to make it easier to follow along. So we got our section AC and BC, and now we need to join them along the long edge here. So to do that, we want to place them right sides together. We're just going to flip the AC section right on top of BC. Make sure your gray fabric C, is at opposite ends. There we go. And then let's put some pins. And the same thing with this seam. You do not have to backstitch at the start and stop, but you can if you prefer. It will save you a step later on, but I just prefer it the other way. So I'll show you that as well. So let's take this to our machine and stitch right along the long seam here. Okay, so now we got the two sections pieced together, and we want to do the same thing again, open it up and then press our seam open. And I'm going to get it going just a little bit again. There we go. Okay, get a tip of your iron in there and then press it as you go along the seam. Might need a little extra pressing where you meet the other seam. That one can be a little tough to get pressed down. A little longer press. There. So now we have our main piece done. So what we want to do is we want to top stitch around each of the 4 pieces of fabric. Again, it just gives it a really nice finish. It will also help keep the seams that we pressed open in place, so when you wash the bandana, those seams will continue to lay nice and flat. So this is an optional step, but I highly recommend that you go ahead and do it. So let's go do our top stitching. And this is actually a pretty fun part because you can choose different color threads for the different fabrics, or do one color thread. This is a good spot to get creative. So let's go do our top stitching. I am just going to go ahead and use the pink thread for all of it to make it stand out as much as possible as I'm showing you. Okay, we have our top stitching done. See, you just did a nice top stitching around each of the 4 fabrics. And here's that next step that you want to do if you did not backstitch as you were piecing these 4 pieces together. I prefer to do it this way, but either way is perfectly fine. So because we didn't backstitch, these seams where the fabric was pieced together are not super strong. So when we go to turn the bandana right side out, sometimes you kind of stretch the fabric a little bit and this seam might pop open. So what I like to do is I like to just do like 8 stitches right across the seam there to help secure it. And I do that on all 4 seams that we have. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so now I got my little extra 8 stitches across that seam there to help keep it in place. And you just want to do it like about 1/8. Seam allowance is what you want to use, because that way when you do your 1/4 inch seam allowance to assemble the bandana, you won't see that stitching. So the next step is to trim the corners and get ready to assemble the bandana. And what you want to do is you want to measure 2 inches from one side of the corner and 2 inches from down from the other, down from the corner as well. Make sure you do this in the fabric A's, on the fabric A and fabric B. You do not want to do it on fabric C. And I'm actually gonna flip this so the wrong side is up, because the fabric is always not as strong in color on the back side, so it's easier to see the marks when I make them. So I am going to do a 2 inch. So we got our 2 inch right here. Here's the corner. And we're gonna just make a little mark. And then we're gonna do 2 inches down from the corner and make a little mark there. And then we'll take our ruler and draw a line from the one mark to the other, just like that. And that is where you want to how much you want to trim from the corner. And I gotta turn it around because I am left-handed. So go ahead and trim your corner. There. And we have our trim corner. And we want to do that for fabric B as well. And I'll show you another way you can do that. If you have a cutting mat and rotary cutter, this is a super easy way to do it where you don't have to mark it with a pen. You just use the guide, the inch marks on your cutting mat. So we have each square is an inch, the thicker line ones. So we got 1 inch, 2 inches, or here we got 1 inch, 2 inches. And then you just put your ruler right by the 2 inch mark there and the 2 inch mark on this side. Use your rotary cutter and boom, you are done. So that's another way you can do it. All right, so now let's get to assembling the bandana. The first thing, I'll do it this way so it matches your pattern. The first thing we need to do is make a crease line in the middle because that'll help us know where to position the tie straps. So we want to fold the bandana in half, wrong sides together, so you got the right side out, and then the two fabric C pieces will meet at the tip, and then take that to your iron and give it a good press up on the fold. All the way across. Okay. All right, it's starting to look like a bandana. So let's get those tie straps on. To do that, we need to open the bandana back up, right side facing us, because we want that to be on the inside when we sew it closed. Take one of your tie straps, and with the open end of the tie strap, place that towards the raw edge where we trimmed the corner. We're going to do that on fabric B, and I always have to turn it because I'm left-handed here. Maybe you do too. Okay, and I like to put a couple pins in that strap because if I only put one, it can kind of slide around on me. So put 2 pins in there to get that nice and secure. And then we do the same on the other side. The open end of your tie strap, place it along that raw edge where you trimmed the corner. Get a couple pins in there. There. All right. And now we need to fold the bandana in half again. So we're just going to take that one fabric C and get it down to meet the tip of the other fabric C. And then we're going to pin all the way around the bandana and get ready to sew it closed. So let's start pinning here. Get one in there to hold that. And then put a few down the side. There, one down by the tip. And then we'll come up on the other side. And we have to remember that we need to leave a little gap, a little opening in our seam for us to turn the bandana right side out. And what I like to do for that is I like to use 2 pins instead of 1, because it reminds me when I hit that spot that I need to stop and not sew over that section. I want to leave that open. So here's what I do. I put 2 pins together there, and let's see, this is about 3 inches. It's got to be close. And 2 pins right next to each other there. So whether I get to this spot first or that, I just know that in between these double needles, I do not sew. So that's a good little tip to help you reminder. A couple times I've finished it up and I sewed all the way around and had to rip an opening. So this will help you remember. So let's take this to our sewing machine. You're going to start right here by the fold, sew down the side over the strap that's on the inside, and then down to the point where you want to leave an opening. Make sure you back stitch at every starting and stopping point to secure the seam. Jump over here, stitch, back stitch, and then go all the way around and up the other side with the strap underneath, and make sure you back stitch here as well. I will meet you back here in a minute. All right, we got that stitch closed along the sides here, except our little gap on the side. So before we turn it right side out, we want to trim our 5 corners. And again, just make sure you don't trim too close to your seam, so you end up compromising that. To the tip here, and on the other side. One more. There. Okay. Now let's turn it right side out. And I find it helps if I put my thumb inside and then use my finger to help guide it out. But this is where having that extra little seam across where you joint the different pieces, the 4 pieces, helps make sure nothing comes undone. Or if you back stitched when you piece them together, that does a trick too. Look at that, we have our bandana. And give a nice little tug at the straps because the fabric tends to pucker a little bit. So just give it a nice little tuck. And then we need something pointy to get our tip looking nice. There, that looks pretty good. And then again, I just like to finger press the seams just a little bit to get ready for pressing. There, that looks good. And then as you press the bandana and the seam that you just made, we need to make sure that we get the raw edge of our opening tucked inside just enough to follow the rest of the seam. So this one looks a little too much. There we go. And then give that a good press too. So let's get that done. So I'm going to start by giving it a press up here, and I'll kind of reinforce that first press we did. Press that little piece, and then I'm ready to press that opening in place. There, that looks really good. You'll never be able to tell that was open. And then you just press all the way around. Give the bandana itself a nice little press to get any wrinkles out. And you can use steam or mist a little water on there too. I'm just gonna give the straps a nice little ironing too. Got a few wrinkles going on here. Just give it a little water. There, that's looking pretty good. We'll get the other strap and we'll be ready for our last step. All right, so the last step left is to top stitch the same seam that we just did on the inside, and this time we'll go over the opening to get that closed up and up the side by the straps again. Now, if you like to use little handmade tags, this is a step where you want to add that, and they just go right inside the opening. And then you just stitch right over that when you do your top stitching. If you don't have any handmade tags, we do have these for purchase in our web store at creativedogmom.com. This is absolutely not something you have to do, but it does look kind of cute to add a little tag like that. So I think I will go ahead and add one. And these have a little paw print and they say handmade with love. So let's take our bandana and go top stitch it, and that is our final step. And that is it. We are done. Got a beautiful bandana. It is reversible. How fun was that to make? Have fun with the pattern. You can piece so many different fabrics together. You can do holiday ones too, birthday ones. Yeah, so many fun options piecing those 3 different fabrics together. So happy sewing!